1. In my first job, I worked in IT as an access and permissions administrator at a large company with a significant technological debt. The environment included custom software dating back to the Windows 9X and even DOS era. Initially, the work was quite tedious, involving a lot of back-and-forth communication between multiple departments. We had to ensure that each employee had the necessary training and documentation to access data in the scope requested by their manager. Additionally, we needed approval from the manager of the department related to the system role in question. On top of that, the company's excessive paper-only bureaucratic workflow made the work go at a snail's pace. A single SAP account for a blue-collar worker required at least 3 forms signed by different people. The heads of departments responsible for signing those papers didn't feel any urgency to send them to us quickly. A good example of this is when I myself waited over 2 weeks after being hired in the IT department before my first account was set up. Until then, I only had a guest account that allowed me to access the main internal website with the company's procedures, regulations, and other basic information. Up to this point, each signed form had to be physically delivered to us, which was agonizingly slow given that the company had multiple branches. We decided to automate away the paperwork. Our first step was to allow the use of scanned documents. It was a partial success. While it eliminated the courier delays, management still required us to sign the physical copies afterward, which we mass-stamped at the end of each month. The next step was to introduce a fully electronic workflow. We faced significant resistance from the upper management, so we had to settle on a system that mostly replicated the existing paper processes. Despite this, it was a game changer. We created presets that managers could select and customize as needed, using data from these customizations to create better-fitting presets. We also developed workflows that automatically generated and assigned subtickets for necessary approvals and tracked how long it took, sending reminders if needed. And finally, we got approval from HR to access layoff data to generate user block and removal tickets. Sometime after we rolled out the new system, the HR and payroll manager made a big fuss. She was furious that her team was still waiting weeks to get their permissions and questioned whether all our work had been for nothing. That really struck a chord with me. Inside, I was overjoyed, but I did my best to keep a neutral expression. At that time, we were working on summary reports with burndown and bottleneck charts, and I already knew that tickets requesting HR and payroll access were spending over most of their lifespan waiting for her or one of her sub-managers to approve them. The manager immediately went on the defensive, claiming she couldn't keep up with the amount of tickets. She then requested a change. She wanted any request from her employee to be automatically approved with the relevant scope for their sub-department. For example, a request for an HR worker to have full HR access and limited payroll access would be automatically approved for HR access, but not for payroll, and vice versa. I was skeptical, but weren't exactly in a position to argue. I asked my boss to join the discussion and explained that the goal was to prevent overly permissive approvals that could lead to unauthorized access. I tried to convince her to brainstorm together potential edge cases before making a blanket approval, but she was already set on her decision and wasn't interested in discussing details. My boss shrugged and said it would be her responsibility. He told her to write up an official document outlining the change, and we would proceed with the implementation. The only request we had was to include a line that each sub-request would still be created, assigned to as normal, and marked as automatically approved by the name of the main HR and payroll manager decision. I uploaded the scan into our system and, anticipating that it would eventually backfire, made a photocopy to keep it handy in the top drawer of my desk. The original copy went to the archive. A few weeks later, she stormed into our room. The speed with which she flung open the door made it clear she was furious. She demanded to know why we had granted full access to payroll data to her subordinate. I think it was the only time I have ever heard anyone yell in the company. I calmly reminded her of her request to automatically approve in-department access requests. She wasn't having it, explaining that one of her low-ranking subordinates from the payroll sub-department had accessed the salaries of everyone in their department, including managers, and was unhappy with the paycheck disparity. Isn't that obvious that they shouldn't be able to do that? Well, yeah, to a human, but that decision was automated away by your request. I handed her a copy of the document she had signed, which instructed us to automatically approve any and all such tickets without exception. Immediately afterward, she asked us to roll back the change, while she wrote up another document to cancel the previous one. In the following days, she meticulously reviewed all those tickets and requested us to reduce access for several users. I have to admit she did a thorough job and kept up a good pace in reviewing new requests, doing it daily instead of once every week or two as before. In the end, we still managed to distill a subset of permissions that could be approved automatically, and proceeded to implement a similar approach with other departments. P.S. I don't know whether the payroll employee managed to get the raise, but I'm sure they weren't fired, as we didn't receive any tickets to book or remove any accounts from that department in the following months. 2. This happened just now when I called a Bolt driver to pick up my family for a ride to the local lake. As some background info, the app became very successful where I live because the cars are cleaner and the drivers are usually friendlier than those of the taxicab companies. Some taxi drivers caught on and switched companies, believing they could continue their shady ways there, taking detours to increase the cost, having personal stuff in the cargo bay, smoking while driving. You got the gist of it. To the story. My family wanted to go swimming in the lake, which is located on the other side of our city. My sister wanted to take the bus, but I suggested a Bolt, because the bus station has no shade and there are some constructions being done to the road leading to us. My husband and son obviously agree because neither like the bus, and the car would be faster. So I order a driver. The app says it'll take him about 6 minutes because he needs to finish another ride. Nothing uncommon, no worries. My son is excited. Hubby and sis are optimistic, so we chat away. After about 2 minutes, my son asks to watch the progress, which he often does, and suddenly wonders why the driver is further away. I take a look, and indeed the driver went the opposite direction, passing a store. We surmise that there might have been a construction site too, or that he wanted to bypass ours, and continue chatting. After another 2 minutes, I check my phone and notice him circling the kindergarten. Maybe he wanted to take a shortcut and noticed he couldn't get through. We continue our conversation. After some more minutes, I see the driver getting into a crossing which led our way, finally. The city must be full of construction sites today. I relax a little and to my surprise he continues ahead towards the train station, not us. At this point I realize that he doesn't intend to pick us up. He intends for me to get bored and cancel the ride, in which case he gets a fee anyway. I start fuming. I write him a message stating that I noticed him having difficulties getting to my destination, and that I do not mind him cancelling so that someone else might come. The driver doesn't reply, but gets to the next main street. Possible directions: one way towards us, the train station a little further away, a big hardware store very far away. He chooses the hardware store. I try to call him, but he doesn't answer. At this point, I've had enough. The driver already wasted about 11 minutes of our time. The bus was long gone by now, too. My husband calls another car on his phone while I write a complaint to the app, including a screenshot of the driver and his car, and decide to wait. This driver is not going to drive me anywhere, but I'll be damned if I cancel it now. I will get him to the corner of my street and then cancel. After all, two can play this game. My husband's car gets to us in less than 5 minutes. In all, this time my driver continues to take a scenic route. After a total of 16 minutes, he's got enough and cancels himself. I'm very happy to have ruined 16 minutes of this man's life after he tried to cheat me for my money. Thank gods I wasn't in a rush, otherwise I might have been forced to pay the cancellation fee. 2. This happened a few years ago, so details are a bit fuzzy, and chat is paraphrased. I was T2 tech support for a company that handles my country's largest ISP entire professional email services, all its DNS management services, and a large portion of its website building and web hosting services. This company is tiny, minute, not even a blip in the radar, but has power that I will likely never again hold at my fingertips. One day a ticket comes in from ISP. Big client company is moving away from our proprietary email services and into Microsoft 365, or some such equivalent change. This usually meant that I got to help the client through the process of changing DNS records, migrating inboxes, or just backing up emails, and even actually setting some stuff up on the Microsoft side. Technically not my job, but the ISP's Tech 1 support was woefully undertrained for anything even remotely technical, and terribly unprepared for most things merely commercial, and my company was awesome and treated me right. So, ticket. Client is moving from Service X to Service Y. Please remove their subscription from the database. There seems to be some sort of mistake, which was very common. We remove them from there once the new service is set up and running, otherwise it will delete everything in their subscribed package, including all email storage, DNS records, and website. You likely want to change their subscription to not include email services but keep the rest, since your Microsoft subscription doesn't include DNS and web hosting management. And even that change, only after they have their new email service set up. Yada yada, confirm remove their subscription. Are you absolutely sure this process is not recoverable? All their emails, DNS records, their entire website, including database, will be permanently deleted. Request has been submitted. Remove subscription. At this point, it's been a couple of days since the first ticket, so I call my boss over, absolutely wonderful guy and extremely intelligent, and tell him what they're asking me to do. Alright, let's show them they pay us because we know things they don't. Don't delete the subscription, but suspend all the services that would be affected. Keep those tickets at hand and expect a phone call. If they call you, tell them to talk to me. God, that felt good. I mean, I felt bad for the client because their entire company basically shut down for an afternoon. But when they called my work phone directly from ISP, uncommon, usually just for emergencies, and the nice lady asked me what had happened with the client in the tone that says, "I'm doing my best to hear all sides before making a decision, but I'm freaking the hell out right now." And I directed her to the tickets where I very clearly stated what would happen if I did what they told me to. And then told her to call boss. I felt so vindicated. Boss later told me to let them sweat for a couple of hours because the process should have been unrecoverable, but then turn the services back on. ISP was yet again absolutely thrilled with us, and my name kept coming up more often as the person that solves things. 4. I used to work as a driver for a freight company. We used to handle awkward-sized items that no other couriers would touch. We delivered everything from coffins to tractor parts. We also had to collect things from our customers for delivery the next day. This company had a mixture of contractors and permanent drivers. I was a relief driver. I knew most of the route, so I covered holidays or sickness. The management of the depot consisted of a delivery manager and a collection manager. These two people didn't quite see eye to eye, as sometimes getting the stuff delivered conflicted with getting stuff collected, and their targets reflected failures in a bad way. This particular day, I had to cover a contractor's route. I didn't know the route, so as we had to load our trucks, this took a little longer than usual. I had around 45 deliveries that day, which is high for this predominantly rural route. I asked my manager, the delivery manager, if he knew the route. He replied that he did, and ordered my route for me. So I was good to go, albeit a bit late. I did say that with the volume I had, I may struggle, and I asked him to keep an eye out for me. He said okay. I got to near midday and realized I wasn't going to be able to complete all the deliveries, and the collections wouldn't get done either. I also noted that one of the collections was off route, and the contractor had a vehicle in that area anyway. I called in and spoke to my manager, delivery, and told him that he had a choice of collections or deliveries. I also asked why the contractor couldn't cover the off-road collection. I was told to call back later and he'll see if he can sort something out. He also said that the off-road collection would have to be done too. I called back later and asked for help again. He said there was no help available, so I gave him the option of deliveries or collections, as there wasn't time to do both. I will get to the time a bit later. He categorically said both had to be done. The delivery manager went home, so I called in again and got the collection manager. She reiterated that there was no help at all, so either I failed the deliveries or failed the collections. If that happened, I'd have been hauled into the office the next day. So cue malicious compliance. I called into one of the collections and asked them what time they closed. 6:30 p.m., they said. So I said I'd be back later. I carried on with the deliveries, which took me further away from that collection. At the appropriate time, I stopped delivering and drove to the collection. I collect 2 small parcels, that was all. I then drove back to where I had stopped and carried on delivering. This cost me about an hour. I finished my last delivery at 7:15 p.m. I had a 45-minute drive back to my yard. As I was leaving the round, I got a frantic call from the collection manager. She was wondering where I was. I told her what had happened and told her that I'd asked for help 4 times and was told I had to do everything allocated, so I did, and it wasn't my fault that it happened like this. Here's where the trouble really started. The company's trunking system is a fluid one. It depends on trucks leaving the depot at a certain time. For our depot, the cutoff time is 7:30 p.m. I wheeled in just after 8 p.m. There were 15 angry guys on overtime waiting for me to turn up, and an articulated truck waiting for these 2 parcels. This wait caused the whole trunking system to be late the next day. My routing was discussed when I got back, as it was questionable at best. When I told the collections manager that it was the delivery manager that organized it, there were angry emails between the delivery and collection managers, and I would imagine that the logistics team would have demanded an explanation too. Butts were definitely kicked. The next day, no one said a word. I wasn't on that route going forward, well, for a little while. They either helped when I asked or didn't get me to do as much. Also, as I exceeded legal driving time, they had to make sure that I went home early for a few days, so a bit of a win there. The biggest trouble these guys had was they always assumed that their drivers were after an easy day, and even when presented with the evidence, assumed that you were still trying to be fly. This time it bit them badly. 5. If I were to ask you about your most problematic neighbor, I'm certain there's a good portion of people that would have no problem naming them. In 2010, I moved in with my girlfriend, now wife, and I began to relish that sense of independence one feels once moving away from home. Liz, aka Lizard Girl, made ends meet as a manager at our old coffee shop, as well as being a breeder of small reptiles. People around town knew her pretty well. She was and still is well liked by the majority of our neighbors. This is with the exception of one. Our former next-door neighbor, Gladys, was one of those holier-than-thou busybodies, you know the type, perpetually stuck in the 1950s, wearing so much perfume you might as well assume they took a shower in the stuff. Always wears their Sunday best to church, yet they go out of their way to be as judgmental as possible the other 6 days of the week. This was pretty much her in a nutshell, with a few other caveats. She had a reputation throughout the neighborhood as the local religious nut. And before anybody gets the wrong idea, I don't believe there's anything wrong with Christianity, so long as you practice what you preach. Love thy neighbor, do unto others as you'd have done unto you. I have seen instances where religion helped somebody turn their life around for the better. And for those of you that hear the term religious nut and feel as if I may be lumping you into a certain category, please understand I'm not, as long as you don't fall into this particular category. You don't, do you? Gladys was well known for breaking out a bullhorn to exchange in protests that only she cared about. Ozzy Osbourne has a new album out. Sharon, our local Target happens to be selling it.
Oh no, save the children.
Halloween is in the air and kids are out trick-or-treating. Reese's Cups, Twizzlers. Why hand that out to the 5-year-old dressed like Captain America when you can give him a miniature pamphlet explaining all the different ways he's going to burn in hell because he wanted to dress like a Marvel superhero for a few hours on one night? And heaven forbid you ever confronted her about her behavior. She was suddenly and fervently offended on behalf of the entire American Christian nation. You could almost guarantee that she would be out in front of whatever place of business you worked, shouting out religiously fueled conspiracy theories. One of my co-workers even pointed out an incident with her, where she was shopping on his day off, and he put a box of Monster energy drinks into his cart. She happened to be walking by. She stopped and attempted to give him a sermon about that satanic drink he was consuming. Hellfreezers note there is an energy drink available called Hell, just for future reference. So I kind of knew what was in store for me, and as much time as I allowed myself for prep, I still wasn't ready for the day she decided she was going to be neighborly. Our backyards are separated by a small picket fence, just about 4 feet in height, with a fair amount of separation between the slats. It's a nice summer day. I am laying in the backyard, trying to get a tan while my cat chases dragonflies and plays in the yard. I'm a Batman fan. I named my cat Cobblepot, Cobbles for short, because of the fact that he was born special needs. His right front paws were malformed at birth, and he was born with a cleft palate. I saw him staring back at me from that cage and animal control, and I knew he had to be mine. As I grew older, I realized he had a neurological disorder as well. He wobbled over whenever he walked, and it gave him this kind of gait like a 3-legged penguin. So, he's in the backyard with me doing his thing, absolutely loving life, when I hear the sound of somebody clearing their throat. I sit up from the beach blanket I laid out on the lawn, and as I look to the left of me, I see Gladys staring me down, wearing a blue floral sundress and a pair of oversized blue blocker sunglasses. She's got her red hair with salt and pepper gray streaks slicked back, and bobby pins all over the place. It hadn't occurred to me at the time, but it was a Sunday, and she looked like she was going to put her wig on when she spotted me minding my own business.
You know, you shouldn't be doing that on God's Day. Have some decency and cover up.
This was her way of greeting me, not a hello, not so much as a, yo, what's up? Just instant judgment. Ma'am, it's a bit counterproductive for me to be laying out here trying to get a tan in a sweatsuit. I'm sorry if me doing this somehow offended you, but I'm minding my own business. I'm just taking advantage of the sunny day. She scoffed and went to go say something else before she turned her attention to my cat.
Oh, sweet baby Jesus, what's wrong with that animal? Does it have rabies or something?
I scanned my backyard looking for something along the lines of a raccoon or a skunk, but it takes me a second to realize she's talking about Cobblepot. Ma'am, that's my cat. He's indoor-outdoor and sticks to our backyard. He has a neurological disorder and some birth defects, but he does just fine. He's no trouble. At worst, he might figure out a way to get through the fence and lay on your lawn chair, but mostly keeps to himself. She takes off her sunglasses, and she's mean-mugging me with such a scornful expression.
What kind of monster doesn't get an animal with all these problems put down?
Suddenly, my mood to lay out and bronze a bit was DOA. Excuse me? Maybe I didn't hear you correctly. Get him put down? Like anything on God's green earth, he deserves a fighting chance. He's more than proven he is capable, despite everything, and he's a member of my family. I would advise you to leave him alone and leave us alone for that matter. She starts to speak up, and I can hear her tone raise an octave or two, when we're interrupted by my other next-door neighbor, Richie. also known as the sweetest guy on the block. "Hey ladies, everything good out here? I was in the kitchen loading up the dishwasher, and I thought I heard a commotion." Gladys turned her attention away from me for a moment and shot Richie a look.
"Mind your own damn business, heathen."
A lesser man would have more than likely put her in her place on the spot. Richie's a different breed. When I think of the word unshakable, I usually think of him. He just looks at her and says, "Okay, Miss Gladys, I heard shouting and wanted to make sure you were safe. No need for name-calling. After all, judge not, am I right?" Gladys thrust her arms down to her side and started shaking her head, while huffing and puffing as if she was trying to think of some sort of clever comeback. Instead, she pulled a 180 and went back through her back door. But she took the time to scream, "Jezebel!" in my direction before closing it. Richie rolled his eyes and chuckled. "Some things never change," he said to me before asking what exactly happened. I told him word for word the entire exchange. "You stood up for yourself?" he asked with a slight look of concern on his face. "Absolutely, wouldn't you?" I asked, waiting for a reasonable response. Instead of that, he leveled with me. "Deena, I'm going to be real with you. I've lived in this neighborhood since I was 12. Took over the house payments and mortgage when my parents decided to move away. This woman has been my neighbor for almost my entire life. When she found out I was a tattoo artist, she accused me of being a drug dealer. When I started dating my wife, she tried telling her I was a convict in the making, and more than likely a Satanist. Want to know why? Because I got a package one day and I opened it up on the porch. It was a tattoo ink I was really looking forward to trying out, and when I yelled, 'Sweet, my tattoo ink is here!' She happened to be in her yard working on her garden. She started flinging names at me, and it rubbed me the wrong way, so I told her to stick it. That's when the rumors began. She even protested out in front of my tattoo shop with that stupid bullhorn. I had to get the cops involved. They only let her off with a warning. It was enough to get her off my back, but I don't know if lightning will strike twice. I would just give her a wide berth." I took his advice to heart for a little while. I would check to see if she was out and about, paying a little too much attention to my property. There were some occasions when I would see her outside. I would just casually wave hello, only to have her turn her nose up at me. But if she didn't mess with me, my cat, or my girlfriend, I was going to let the backyard incident slide. My sister Mackenzie was about to get married. She lived in a really tiny apartment, so my girlfriend Liz and I offered to let her use our place for the bridal shower. It wasn't big, maybe 14 people total. Counting my girlfriend's car, there were maybe 5 in the driveway. As far as noise was concerned, we set up a ping-pong table in the garage and broke out the stereo in order to play some 70s rock. We have the garage door open, the sounds of Queen, Alice Cooper, Aerosmith, Fleetwood Mac. Music that was noticeable, but it was in no way anything in line with, let's say, Cradle of Filth. All of us girls having a great time playing ping-pong for prizes, mostly novelty stuff, but with a bit of a traditionally playful and perverse bridal shower theme. Just as my sister wins a large, phallic-shaped rainbow candle and puts it from the box to transfer it to her prize bag, we look up and Gladys is standing there absolutely horrified. She hits their roof.
"I came over here to say something about your obnoxious devil music. But instead, I find your lot having some sort of sapphic public orgy. With an open door, no less. You're disgusting."
My sweet Liz is a people person, super laid back, genuine, understanding, and I can gush about all the reasons she and I fell in love. If you tick her off, it's because she had a damn good reason to be angry. "Look, lady, we've had enough walking on eggshells around you. My girlfriend's sister is having a bridal shower at our place. It's 2 in the afternoon. We're planning on being done no later than 7. We're minding our own business, just like you should be. Noise curfew is 9 p.m., and I don't know about the whole devil music thing. If you're referring to what we're playing, maybe I can try to play Dream On backwards and see if I get some sort of hidden messages. But please, do us a favor. Mind your own damn business and get bent." Gladys stood in our driveway and proceeded to scream at the top of her lungs like an indignant 5-year-old. My sister spoke up and yelled out to go somewhere. She turned around and walked down our driveway in order to leave, but decided to kick the tire of one of the vehicles while screaming out, "Let's pull perverts!" "Way to be a good Christian," yells my sister's best friend, as she now shuffles back to her house. I'm thinking the kick did something to her foot. Not too long after, a squad car pulls up in our driveway. A younger female officer approaches us as we continue to play ping pong. We turn down the music as to prevent any further provocation. The officer shows up and asks us what's going on, and we tell her we're having a rather tame bridal shower for my sister. We didn't even hire strippers. We literally just wanted to have a girls' day where we played ping pong, won prizes, and gave each other facials and pedicures. The bridal shower equivalent of a girls' day out. The officer looked over at Gladys's house and saw her watching everything unfold from behind a window curtain gingerly pulled to the side. "Uh-huh, that's Mrs. Gladys. Anonymous noise complaint my butt. Ladies, you keep doing what you're doing. I see nothing illegal here. We know who called this in, and she's notorious for wasting our time. I can't believe we even had to come out here." She gave us a bid farewell and headed back to the squad car, but before she could pull out of the driveway, another vehicle pulls up. Animal control. The younger male officer in the animal control vehicle gets out and talks to the officer, getting ready to leave, and she gives him a little bit of detail as to why they had to come out. He looks at Liz and says, "Somebody called about a rabid cat in your backyard." I swallow rage. I'm getting ready to go over there and give that woman a piece of my mind, badges or not. But I instead explain that my next-door neighbor is a busybody. She is all about wasting people's time, and she's convinced my cat with neurological problems needs to be put down. I bring the officer inside. I introduce him to Cobblepot. He gets a few head pats in and says that he matches the description of the cat in my backyard, and unsurprisingly, determines that my cat is not rabid, nor is he any kind of threat. If anything, he's a good boy. And then the officer turns to me and said something that confounded me. "Gladys is my aunt. She pulls stuff like this all the time, and she's been warned. I can't get through to her, but I'll be damned if I give up trying. Come with me. We're going to go have a chat with her." As we're heading over to her place, I watch him take off his badge and stick it in his pocket. "You didn't see that," he says to me as we approach her front door. He gives the door a rather hard series of knocks before Gladys answers. "Gladys, long time no see. Do you care to tell me why you insist on wasting the police department's time? And why is it you've taken it upon yourself to harass yet another member of this neighborhood?" She grumbles before answering,
First off, just because you wear a badge doesn't mean you're a police officer. You scrape roadkill out of the road. You're nothing more than a glorified trash man with a badge. Secondly, these perverts over there openly sinning and mocking the name of the Lord with their depravity. I should have known this neighborhood would go to hell as soon as we started letting her kind move in," she said as she pointed to me mockingly. I look at the officer and I mouth the word lesbian, and he just widens his eyes and says, "Oh." He turns his attention to his aunt and says, "So you're pulling an Aunt Judith. You ostracized her for coming out of the closet, tried to get the family to turn their backs on her, myself included, and now you're trying to make examples out of your next-door neighbors. Over what? I'm certain you've been told this over and over again. Mind your own damn business. If I have to come out here one more time for something other than an emergency, I'm done pulling the family card. At the very least, you're getting fined." He waves me on and asks me to follow him. Judith is saying nothing, but she looks like she wants to blow up. We just ignore her, because by now we realize it's just par for the course. And for a couple of weeks, things were quiet. Maybe her nephew finally got through to her. Maybe I'm an idiot. Liz had vacation time she had to use. Almost 2 weeks' worth. We were up late planning on where to go. Between a few glasses of wine and many a decision to be made, we didn't go to sleep until a little after 3 a.m. The two of us are in a deep sleep when we are suddenly awakened by the staticky sound of a voice coming through a speaker. Liz is the first one to get out of bed, and when she looks through the window, she sees Gladys standing out in our driveway.
We look at the clock and it's just barely 8 a.m. We listen to her drone on about how the neighborhood needs to be saved from perverts like us. She starts screeching at the top of her lungs about her idea of what we do in our intimate times. Mind you, there are families on this block, children of all ages, and this supposed Christian is getting NC-17 loud enough for a 3-block radius to hear. Liz just picks up the phone and calls the police. Not too long ago, there was a Hellfreezer story about a bratty college kid dealing with a roommate who kept throwing around the term hate crime. This right here, this is a hate crime. This woman was standing in our driveway with a bullhorn defaming us for everybody to hear. She was painting a grotesque picture of the way we lived for anybody willing to listen. It was early in the morning, and surprisingly, it took a while for the police to respond. She was out in our driveway continuing this tirade for close to an hour before the same 2 officers from the party showed up. Did we press charges? You bet your sweet bippy we did. What came of it? Almost nothing. She got charged with defamation of character, she got charged with a noise complaint, and though our lawyer tried, the judge didn't see it our way, and so she never got charged with a hate crime. She got some fines, that's it. But by now the neighbors were sick of her antics. Richie invited us over to his place one day. Apparently he had engaged in some extracurricular activity and managed to come up with an idea. And then he asked Liz and I the weirdest question. Elephant, cow, or gorilla? Without thinking, I just said cow, followed up by, what is that all about? Before he put the order through, he showed me this lovely little website called poopsenders.com. The neighborhood knew we burned through a good portion of our funds on legal fees, and we were more or less stiffed in the court. And so they all chipped in $5 here, $10 there, and Richie let them know his plan. He managed to raise enough money to get the largest possible box on the website. We just had to wait a few days. About a week later, a box big enough for, I guess, an air fryer shows up. She struggles to bring it into the house, and the next thing we know, we hear this loud screech. A few seconds later, Gladys runs out her front door and proceeds to throw up in her bushes. She sits on her front step with her hands on her knees, face towards the ground, and a horrified expression. I walk outside and I feign concern. Everything okay, Miss Gladys? I just saw you up chucking the bushes. Do you need an ambulance?
No, I'll be fine. Something aggravated my sense of smell,
was all she said before going back in the house and not even making eye contact with me. About an hour later, I'm out in my backyard and I see the box sitting in her garden. So, the detail I left out was my personal message Richie had included in the invoice. Treat others as you would like to be treated. Well, you treat us like this, so we figured you'd like it. Keep it up, and there's more where this came from. Your entire neighborhood. Call it a funny guess, but that might have been a pretty big reason as to why she finally started minding her own damn business. The neighborhood put her in her place, and she started to worry about repercussions. It's 2024. We're still living in the same place. Gladys passed in 2020, and the house went up for sale shortly after. We have a nice family living next door. They're quiet, thoughtful. They often invite us over for little get-togethers. And as much as I would hate to admit it, with Gladys gone, this neighborhood is far better. Not perfect. We have the occasional incident, but nobody feels as if they're going to be martyred for trying to live a way that doesn't line up with somebody else's ideals. Thank you so much for listening. Hey everybody, Hellfreezer here, and thank you very much for listening to Revenge is Ice Cream, episode 373. And thank you very much to everybody who allowed me to use and sent in stories for use in this video. Before you go, please hit the like button and subscribe if you'd be so kind. If you'd like to support the channel, you can do that by joining as a channel member, which is now active. I finally relented and activated it. Those are tiered, and you'll find 3 levels. If you'd like to just support as a pay-what-you-feel kind of option, you can do that and get early access to the videos by supporting me on my Patreon page. Other options available are to buy yourself some nice merchandise at my merchandise store, linked for you in the description, or you can leave a tip by clicking on the heart underneath the video player. There's also a Discord server, but that's just for fun. You certainly don't have to do any of that, although I do appreciate it if you choose to do so. Okay, no other bits and bobs today, but let's see. Let's move along to Hellfreezer's question of the day. And today's question is... We're getting toward fall season. This one comes from Newcomb via the Discord. So, pumpkin spice or not for you? Or is there a favorite winter drink that you only ever have in wintertime? Why don't you let me know what you think in a comment below. I tried one pumpkin spice thing and it wasn't very nice. It was an iced coffee. I am open to trying other things though. And before we go, let's take a look at the answer of the day from a previous video. And this one comes from Revenge's Ice Cream 178 and was about something you don't own, but you wish you did. You've just never gotten around to buying it. Something you would find very useful. And today's answer comes from Lovely 1062. I'd like to get a cat litter box that cleans itself, but I'm afraid that my cats would be scared of it. No, well, I think it's maybe something they'd get used to, hopefully. I know Jack recently got a fancy litter box for Kobe. I don't know if it cleans itself. It might do. I know it does give all sorts of useful health information. Like, your cat has just pooped. That sort of thing. But no, hopefully it's something little kitty cats can get used to. And maybe you've already done it, because this was a year ago. With that, I'm going to head off for now. So until next time, thank you very much for listening, and take very good care of yourselves.